everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I am reviewing the new palette from Natasha Denona. This is the Metropolis palette. When I saw this palette on the Trend Mood website, I knew that I needed to pick this up for several reasons, which I will get into in just a minute. So this palette has 28 brand new shades and 2 new formulas of Natasha Denona's iconic professional quality pressed pigment eyeshadows in a never before seen midi size. So it's got the midi size eyeshadows in a bigger palette, which I can appreciate that because it comes with 28 shades. And I held off on buying the gold palette and the sunset palette. I really wanted to buy those palettes, but I didn't feel like the color story I would use as much. But when I saw this palette, it was almost like those two come together and created this palette. There are a lot of similarities between the gold and the sunset palette and the sunrise palette. It was almost like she was inspired by the gold palette, the sunset palette, and the sunrise palette, and then created this palette. Fortunately for me, the only palette that I do have in my collection is the sunrise palette, which I do enjoy that palette. So this one I was really excited about because it does have a lot of pop of golds in here. And in this video, I create 5 different looks with the palette because I wanted to use as many shades as I possibly can. Like I said in my review of the new Pat McGrath Mothership 6 palette, I am not going to come on here and tell you that this is a palette that you guys need in your collection. It's a $129 palette. At the end of the day, you guys have to decide whether you can, one, budget for it, and if it's something that's worth the splurge, because that's a lot of money to pay for an eyeshadow palette. I am here doing this review to kind of give you guys my thoughts on the palette, create several looks with it. I've created 5 different looks, trying to give you guys maybe some inspiration for those who have bought the palette or maybe considering the palette. I just want to give you guys my thoughts, but I'm not going to tell you guys that you need this palette, or I'm just not going to do that, because before I started my channel, I never had any of these big palettes in my collection, and I was just happy as can be. What doesn't really matter at the end of the day. So if you love Natasha Denona and you're excited about it, and that's fantastic. If you're kind of looking at it like it's a total pass, that's fantastic too. I totally get both sides of it. Later on in the video, I'm going to do some swatches comparing to a few palettes that I have in my collection. Through the tutorials, I did find a few duds in this palette, which was a little bit disappointing just because when you pay that much money for a palette, you really want every shade to be great. This will probably be a pretty long video. I will leave timestamps in the description box down below for those of you guys that want to jump ahead. So without further ado, let's jump right into the first tutorial. Okay, so let's start on look number 1. I kind of want to do something a little bit more of like the gold, kind of like a little bit on the smoky side. There's a lot of gold in this palette. I might end up doing maybe 1 or 2 gold looks. I'm going to first start with the shade Pure, and I'm just going to kind of just start building this in the crease. I'm going to take this brush, the Sonia G Builder Pro, and I'm going to put that shade on the outer corner. I'm just going to go in with my pencil brush from Sonia G. I'm going to go into the shade Antique, kind of create a little bit of depth here on the outer corner. I'm going to go back to that brush I was using without adding any extra product and just kind of blend out the edges. Next, I'm going to go into the shade Penny. I'm going to apply it with this brush, but I'm going to just apply it wet or dry and place it right over top of that dark. Now I did get some fallout, but I have put powder down to kind of help protect that. If you're like me and you don't wear powders on your under eye, I'm only doing this because I'm going to be doing several looks today. I just recommend when you're using colors like this do your eyes first and then do the rest of your makeup. Okay, next up I'm going to take my felt tip applicator, and I like to just dampen it a little bit by just taking a makeup wipe and kind of squeezing it. I like it to be damp, but I don't like it to be wet. And I'm going to go into the shade Blaze. Oh man, that is some shimmer. I'm going to put that all over my eyelid. Oof. And it is very loose. It's very pretty, but it might make a mess, so. And I'm kind of just like gently bringing that up into the top part of my crease, just kind of above it. I'm gonna go back into the shade Antique here on this Builder Pro and really pack that here on this outer corner. Kind of blending that into that gold. Now I'm going to take a black eyeliner, so I'm just going to take this one from Marc Jacobs. And I'm just kind of going along this part of my lash line. I'm just going to take like a small smudger brush and just kind of blend that out. I'm going to go into Symbol here on this brush and go over top of that. Then I'm going to go into Antique and go over top of it. I went over a little bit too far, so I just went back into the gold and placed it back over top. I'm going to take my black eyeliner and go up on the waterline on the upper and the lower. When I put black on the bottom waterline, I like to take that same brush and kind of buff it out instead of just leaving it. It seems like it just gives you a much more smooth type of look on the lower lash line. Okay, so I'm gonna first go into the shade Pure and kind of bring that down into that black. And then I'm going to take that smaller brush that I was just using and go into the shade Antique. Buff that as close to the lash line as I can get. Right over top of that black. For the inner corner, I think I'll just go into the shade Queen. Just kind of stick that right here. Just to kind of brighten things up with such a dark look. It's not very vibrant, so I'm going to spray it and see if we can get that one to be a little bit more. There we go. So this is the final look on this eye, and I think it turned out really pretty. So the gold shimmer, the shade Blaze, that one is definitely a loose glitter, as you saw, so just be careful when you're applying it. There's always those nights where you're going out to dinner or something and you need that bold type of smoky eye, and this is a really pretty gold smoky eye. Let's go ahead and move on to look number 2. Now for look number 2, I kind of want to play with like the olive green tones. So let's go ahead and start on this eye. So I'm going to take the shade Rhizome, which is kind of like a real pretty mustard yellow shade. And I'm just going to take a brush that's shaped like this, just to use it as a base. I'm going to go into the shade Lethal, which is kind of like an army green shade. I'm going to apply that right here on the outer corner, kind of in a little bit of a V shape like this. I might have to switch brushes. This one, yeah, this brush is not going to work. Right, I'm going to take my Builder Pro. I have to make sure the angles are good. It's hard because my monitor's over there, so I don't know where I'm blocking you and stuff. It's kind of a pain, but. Then I'm going into the shade Troop, and Troop is like an olive dark shade, and I'm using that over top of that shade. So that's why I wasn't being too particular, because I was just using that other shade as a little bit of a base to give it some depth. I am getting some fallout from both of those shades, so just FYI. I'm going to go back into that mustard yellow shade one more time And I'm going to go back into the shade Symbol, and I'm going to kind of bring that right here on the outer corner. I'm going to go into the shade Orium, I guess is how you pronounce it. I'm going to place that shade on this pretty yellow shade and just really make that mustard shade pop. And I'm going to use that to kind of spray it up into the crease as well. And that shade, very messy. Holy smokes, it's messy. It's very, very finely milled, but it's not very packed. And that's more of like a topper shade, so it's not like super, super intense, which is why I wanted to put a base underneath it. It's like a sheer type of color. Because it's such a loose shadow, I'm going to use a brush and I'm going to spray it. Yeah, see, that just makes it pop. So I'm taking the shade Shield and I'm placing that over top of the emerald green, or that olive green that we have down. And I'm just gonna kind of just build that intensity and that darkness and depth in the outer corner. And I'm gonna kind of just bring that right softly into the crease right up here. And kind of just start pushing some of the shadow out, but giving some dimension up here. I'm picking up a little bit of Shield and a little bit of Troop. Start building my outer corner. So I've got the shadows down and now I'm just going to kind of blend it with a clean brush. This look is definitely messy, so FYI. I'm taking a little bit of that rhizome and kind of bringing that into this part of the crease, just right up here, just to get a little bit of color up there. And I'm going to place this on the lower lash line. I'm going to go into the shade Antique, gently place that on the lash line, just to kind of give that mustard yellow shade some depth on the lash line. And I'm going to go into Troop and stick that right here on this outer corner, keeping it right close to the lash line, kind of buffing that in. I'm going to use a brown eyeliner and I'm going to go up on my waterline. I think I'll take that on the bottom waterline as well. I'm going to go back into that brush and blend it out. So this is the final look for look number 2. I love those golds with those greens, and these greens blended out super pretty, and I love the way that the mustard yellow just really brought that color on the lid to life. Let's go ahead and move on to look number 3. Okay, I'm going to start this over. I went to go into look number 3 and I didn't like the way it was turning out. It just wasn't what I wanted. So here I am. I'm going to, attempt to try it again. I'm going to try to do something in like the rose gold type of area. But I will say I'm just a little bit disappointed in this shade right here, which is called Queen. It looks really pretty on the finger, and then when you swatch it, it's just kind of like, I swatched it right here earlier, but it's not that pretty. It's not that vibrant. And I also am not really in love with the shade Helena, because it's like, you've got to just pack it on like crazy to get it. It's just really dull. Like, there's 2 shadows so far that I have found that are just a little bit lackluster. Like, they're just lacking that vibrancy that you get from a Natasha Denona palette. I don't know. I don't understand it, but they're not my favorite. I'm going to go into the shade Crest. I'm going to kind of start applying this on the outer corner. And let me just say this, for that being a shimmer shade, it's not very pigmented. It is when you pack it, but not when you blend it. So I've got quite a bit here on the brush, and you really have to kind of build this shade if you're going to want to use it as an actual like shadow in the crease to blend. You're going to have to pack it to get the depth. It's not my favorite either. Like those, I found 3 shades that I'm just not really impressed with. I take that shade and pack it here on the outer corner. I'm gonna go into the shade Antique, and I'm gonna kind of put this over top of it to add a little bit of depth to that shade. This is how the eyeshadow should look on its own. You know what I'm saying? Like, I understand going in the beginning, but as you know, I went into it 3 times and it really didn't give me a lot of dimension. So I had to go into a darker shade to go over top of it to give that depth. I'm gonna go first into the shade Crest and bring that on the lower lash line. But see what I mean? Like, where is that shade? Like, it takes so much to build it. I don't understand why that shade is not more pigmented than it is. So I'm gonna go into the shade Antique. I'm gonna go into the shade Queen, and I'm gonna apply this right here on the inner corner. But I just want you guys to see what I'm talking about. Like, as far as just, it's just not very vibrant. It's just kind of like lackluster. I don't know what the deal is with that shade, but it's just not that pretty of a shade. And if you apply it wet, it doesn't, it kind of gets a little bit skippy. Like, it won't be like a good blend. And I don't know, I'm thinking that maybe the finger might be the best way to apply this shade. Don't get me wrong, I think it's a good shade, and as you keep applying it, it gets like better and better. But I just kind of hoped that I didn't have to go in that many times to get that vibrancy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I went into it 5 times now. This is the 5th time to get this look. You just kind of want more from a palette that's that expensive, but don't get me wrong, it's pretty, but it's not anything special, and it's not very vibrant. But again, I'm not a makeup artist. I don't ever claim to really know what I'm talking about. I am just like you guys, you know, most of you are just makeup enthusiasts and love to play with makeup and love to play with eyeshadows. I did get a ton of fallout. A ton. So this is the final look for look number 3. And don't get me wrong, I think it turned out really pretty. The shades were just not my favorite as far as just pigmentation. It just wasn't there. That's it for tutorial number 3. Let's move on to look number 4. So for look number 4, I want to use the orange shades like right up here on the top area. I think I'm going to first start with the shade Ripe. I'm going to put Ripe right in the crease. Now this shade is pigmented. Wow. I'm going to tap some here on this outer corner. Dang, that shade is really pigmented. Then I'm gonna go into the shade Stain. And Stain kind of came in my palette Broken. It's this shade right here. So I kind of just like tapped it and like pressed it back into place. It wasn't like broken as far as pieces of chunks of the color, but it had like a little crack through it. And so I kind of just like mushed it together with my fingers. Just place that right here on this outer corner. That color has a little bit more of a shine to it. It's still a matte, but it has a shine to it, and so it's going to give a little bit of that dimension. And I'm going to go into the shade Antique, and this is also one of those like matte shades that are soft and kind of have that shiny feel to them. I'm going to take a felt tip applicator and I'm going to go into the shade Rust. I'm just going to like gently apply that right here on that line and kind of blend it into the dark. And I'm going to go into the shade Orium. Orium kind of has a green undertone to it, which does look really, really pretty with the olive tones. But I think it will also look really pretty with this copper color. Oh, that shade is gorgeous, seriously. I'm gonna go into the shade Ripe and put that right here on the lower lash line. I'm gonna go into Antique. I'm basically gonna stick this right on the lash line. Okay, so I guess for the inner corner, I'm gonna go into Queen. Oh, I got it all over my eye. Ooh. Okay, so this is the final look of the fourth look, and I love this orange gold look. It's really, really pretty, and I love how the shades really blended good together, and the mattes were really pigmented, and I especially love that really pretty copper shade that's called Rust. Ooh, it's so pretty. That's it for look number 4. Let's go ahead and move into look number 5, which is the final look. Okay, let's get started on look number 5, and this is gonna be the final look because I don't know that my eyes can take any more wiping on and wiping off and wiping on and wiping off. I just don't feel like they can. I think they're done. For this look, I kind of wanted to use the emerald green, and I'm gonna first start with the shade Chrism. I'm gonna apply Chrism right here in the crease. That shade's not very pigmented either. I mean, it is, but it's not. Let's see if we can get some depth. It's a really pretty orange shade though. I am gonna go into the shade Pure and go right over top of that shade and just add that depth. I'm gonna go into the shade right below it, which is called Antique, and I'm putting that right over top of it. That shadow is really soft and it does have a really pretty shine. It's just takes a minute to build it, you know, like it's one of those kind of shadows right here, kind of creating that line and then just go in and buff it out. I'm going with the shade Jubilee, which is like a really pretty emerald green. I'm going in with a dry brush first to see what we get as far as pigment. All right, let's go in with the finger and really bring that intensity. Now I'm going back into Antique and I'm just gonna kind of buff out these edges. Now I got quite a bit of fallout with that green, so just FYI. Now I'm going in with the shade Orium and I'm gonna pop that right here on the center of that emerald green. It just adds a little bit of that gold factor to that emerald. For the lower lash line, I'm going in with Chrism. As the base. Then I'm going with Antique right on the base of the lash line. I'm going to take a brown eyeliner and go along the lower lash line and the upper waterline. Then I'm going to take the smudge brush and kind of smudge that out, kind of smoke it out a little bit. For the inner corner, I'm going to go into Orium, which is what we put over top of that emerald green, and I'm just going to pop it right here on the inner corner, just a little. So this is the final look for look number 5, and this is definitely a really pretty look, and I really like that emerald green. It's really, really pretty, especially with that little bit of pop of something on the lid, and just kind of brought it all together, and I really love the way that this turned out. So let's go ahead and jump into the swatches and a few comparisons, and I will get into my final thoughts. Okay, so now that we got through all of the swatches, let's go ahead and give you guys my final thoughts. I don't know that I'm gonna have the same opinion that everybody else is gonna have, but I'm not really feeling this palette, you guys. I like it, but I don't love it. I'm not loving this palette. There's a few duds in here. Like I've said, I feel like this is a dud, just not very shimmery. This is a dud. This is kind of a dud, but it's made to be kind of a topper, so I kind of get that one. This one's kind of it's okay, but I don't really love these shades. I just don't. There are a few duds in here, and I mean, that's bound to happen when you do have this many shades. So I'm gonna kind of give it a little bit of a pass, okay? Majority of them are good. They're pigmented, the mattes are pigmented, the golds are really pretty. The only thing I would say that's negative about all of them is the fact that I got a lot of fallout. So because I'm a person that doesn't put powder underneath my eyes, I only did it for the tutorials. This is something that I'm gonna have to use before I apply my face makeup, and normally I don't do that. So it's kind of something that I don't reach for palettes that I know are gonna have a lot of fallout. You know what I mean? Because normally that's not the way I typically apply my makeup. I feel like she was inspired by the Sunrise palette, the Sunset palette, and the Gold palette, and kind of created this. But for those of you out there who love Natasha Denona and you've pretty much bought all of her bigger palettes, I don't really see the need for this, for those of you out there that already have those palettes. For those that don't, like me, I don't have those palettes. I do have the Sunrise palette, but I don't have the Sunset or the Gold palette or anything like that. Then I'm kind of like, I can see that. I can see the purchase of this if you wanted the Gold palette and you've been wanting the Sunset palette. And this, you know, this is kind of all of those into one, is kind of my vibe. But when I swatched it next to the Sunrise palette, as you saw in the swatches, there was a lot of repetitive shades, like a lot. And this palette has quite a few shadows, and I kind of felt like if she was gonna do this palette, why not just do different shades? Why be so repetitive? You know what I mean? When I saw it on the Instagram and stuff like that, and I saw the pictures, I was like, oh, okay, this is perfect for me, because it's the Gold palette and the Sunrise palette all into one, and I was super excited about it. But now that I've played with it, I don't have that same excitement that I did, and I don't know. I don't know that I'll be reaching for it all that much. I have the Born to Run palette, which you saw in those swatches. This palette is a lot like that palette. Like, this palette has a lot of the similar story in here. The only thing you're not getting in this palette is all of the gold, like really pretty shimmer shades that this palette has. I mean, you don't have those gold shades, but these are very similar palettes. Like, there's some similarities as far as the color story goes. I'm not saying that this palette is better than that one. I just did a big video yesterday where I spent 16 hours filming, editing, and uploading the Pat McGrath 5 looks video, and I fell in love with all 5 of the looks that I created with that palette. I was absolutely in love, and it was a palette that I can reach for on an everyday basis. It was all shades that I would definitely wear on a daily basis. These shades I'm not going to wear on a daily basis, and filming with this palette, I didn't love every look, and I even had to wipe one off that I was filming, wipe one off and start over. And so I don't know, you guys. I just don't know how I feel about this one. I'm on the fence. Like, I feel like it's a good deal for those of you who really love these gold shades and you've been wanting to buy the Gold palette and you've been wanting to buy the Sunset palette, but I do feel like this is kind of a good thing for those of you out there that love this color story and love all those golds and those olive tones. I like olive tones, but it's just not, I don't know. There's just something about this palette, I'm not living for it. Every look that I created, I was like, oh, this is okay. Like, I wasn't just like, oh my gosh. When I played with that Pat McGrath palette yesterday, I was, oh my gosh, I love these looks. These are so beautiful, but I didn't get that with this one. I didn't get that proud of the look I created. Do you know what I mean? And you guys know that. Like, when you create a beautiful eye look that you're so proud of and you're so happy about, it just makes you feel so much better. And I didn't get that with this one. Like every look I was like, yeah, it's good. It's good. It's not great, but it's good. You know what I mean? If you guys bought this palette and you're absolutely loving it, that makes me so happy because you are not wasting your money. And that is the worst thing, is to get a palette that is so expensive and then to not be loving it. So if you love it, I am so happy for you because, oh my gosh, that is what you want. And I hope that some of the looks that I created will be helpful for you guys to be creative in the palette and give you a little bit of inspiration. But just for me on a personal level, I'm just not in love with it. Oh, and it makes me sad because I was so excited. I was so excited about this palette. And who knows, it could have been because I did the Pat McGrath yesterday and I'm doing this today, and because I had such a great experience with the Pat McGrath that maybe today, I don't know, you guys, I don't understand it, but I have to be honest. You guys know I am always honest, and I think that's why when I do these reviews, I try to do as many looks as I can. It's a long day. I've been down here, it's almost midnight. Well, it's 11:10. I've been here since about 4 o'clock, so it's been a really, really long day, but I try to do 5 different looks on these bigger palettes because I want to play with many shadows as I can. If I would have judged this palette based on the first 2 looks that I did, I would have told you that I really enjoyed the palette. It was the 3rd, 4th, and 5th look that I was like, ugh, I wasn't feeling it as much. When I'm reviewing these expensive palettes, it's important for me to you as an audience, when you're spending that amount of money on a palette based on, you know, opinions of us behind the camera, I want to do as many looks as I can with a palette like this because it's super expensive. And just because I'm a little bit discouraged does not mean that you will be when you get your palette. If you've ordered it and it hasn't arrived, don't get discouraged by my review because we are all different. And just because I didn't like something doesn't mean that you're not going to. We're all different and we all like such different things. I'm going to continue to play with it, you guys, and I will definitely do an update on this. I hope that this video was helpful for you guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Don't forget to come right back here tomorrow. I am going to be reviewing the new palette from Charlotte Tilbury. It's the holiday palette. It's called The Starry Eyes to Hypnotize. So come right back here tomorrow to check that out. I love you all so much, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day filled with love and joy. I will see you guys right back here tomorrow, and I love you all so much. Bye!